It's where God says what He is going to do for us. So there's grace there, and even back in the Old Testament, in these covenants, there's grace. God's doing it. So anyway, covenant equals contract. So we went through there. Now, the unconditional versus the conditional. We'll get into some of the scripture, but I want you to realize that there are 4 unconditional covenants, and there's 1 conditional covenant with the nation of Israel. Now, I do believe there's a Noahic covenant, and there seems to be some indication there may have even been a covenant with Adam and in the garden. I think in Hosea it says that Adam transgressed against God's covenant. So there's, but those tend to be, universal. These are really specific with the nation of Israel. In fact, within Judaism, they'll say that the Gentiles are required to keep what they call the Noahic laws, and they have them. There's like 7 of them, and that's under the Gentiles are under the Noahic covenant, and the Jews are under the Abrahamic and beyond. So even within Judaism, there's a sense of there is a Noahic covenant, and they would believe that because Noah was for all the people that the Gentiles are under that. So really, we have the Abrahamic. Now, I call the next covenant, and we'll see that the land covenant. You may also hear it called the Palestinian covenant. There's another called the Palestinian. It used to be called the Palestinian covenant. In fact, they used to have the Palestinian post that was now is what it's called now? The Jerusalem post. Okay, and they had the Palestinian Symphony Orchestra. You know what it's called now? The Jerusalem Symphony Orchestra. So when they call it the Palestinian covenant, Palestine had a different connotation. It was before they had the nation of Israel, and it really was where and yes, there were Arabs there, don't get me wrong, but it was, it was primarily, that's where the Jews were going to, but because Palestinian has taken on a different connotation today, I think a better term is the land covenant. Then we have the Davidic covenant, and we'll talk about that, and then the new covenant, and those are in kind of like not really opposition, but they're different than the Mosaic covenant. And we'll talk about the Mosaic covenant, why it was added. I mean, there's a lot of scripture as to why it was added, and the fact that it's temporary, and we'll go through that. And that's a huge issue among Jewish believers. A lot of Jewish believers would hold that the Mosaic law is still in effect, and I think that they put themselves back under bondage. And you kind of get that sense, that was happening in Galatians and things like that. It's not a new thing, but we see that happening today in among Jewish believers, that they want to put themselves back under the law. And in one sense, we don't have a problem with keeping certain aspects of the law, the feast, and other things. But to make that as a requirement, that's where to me that's legalism. If it's optional and you want to do it. I mean, we see Paul went to the temple. He wanted to celebrate it. He did want to celebrate the feasts. He went into the synagogue. None of these things in and of themselves are wrong. But when they become mandated, thou shalt do this, then that's legalism. So we'll talk about the Mosaic law. Now, this is my opinion when I say this. My opinion is Genesis 12, 1-3 is the key section of Scripture in the whole Bible. Because I think what you see in the rest of the Bible is the playing out of that. Okay? And remember what I said. Who fulfills that? Jesus. So it's not that the Scriptures about Jesus aren't important, but this kind of sets this is where everything else radiates from. Remember, God's showing you His plan. Babel was whose plan? Man's plan. Well, isn't it interesting, right after you see man's plan for domination, what does God do? He shows you His plan. And this is Genesis 12, 1-3 is His plan. And it's not a plan just for the nation of Israel. It's a plan to bless the entire world. Okay? But He's going to use the nation of Israel to bring that forth. So don't misunderstand me when I talk about, with Israel. And I'm not saying that God doesn't love. He loves everybody. And so, but realize that this is, to me, the high point of Scripture. And everything else is the playing out of that and interpretation of that and the disobedience to that and God's discipline and all. I mean, that's what you're seeing being played out throughout the Scripture. So let's turn to Genesis. Now that I mentioned that, let's turn there. And we're going to spend, as we go through this, I want to go through a lot of these scriptures, but I think it's important we read them, because if you read them and you realize, and you say, wow, you can take these things literally, and you can understand them pretty easily. They're not confusing. So Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. Now the Lord said to Abram, go forth from your country and from your relatives and from your father's house to the land which I will show you, and I will make you a great nation. And I will bless you and make your name great, and so you shall be a blessing. See, there's the idea. It's not just for Abraham's descendants. I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. Okay? What is God going to do? He's going to use Abram at the time to bless who? The entire world. Okay? Let's skip down to verse 7. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. Who gets the land? His descendants. Who are his descendants? Israel. Okay? All right, let's go to chapter 13. 13, verse 14. The Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, now lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which you see I will give to you and to your descendants forever. I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if anyone can number the dust of the earth, then your descendants can also be numbered. Arise, walk about the land through its length and breadth, for I will give it to you. So who's he giving the land to? All right, let's keep moving. Chapter 15. Okay, we're not going to read the whole thing. And I had some notes on that. I think I left those at home. But here he's talking about that he's going to give him a son. And we know the whole who that there was two sons, and that created some issues. But who was the son of promise?
Isaac.
Right. Okay. It's a little long now. Let's go on to chapter 22. Okay. Verses 15 to 18. Then the angel of the Lord came to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, by myself I have sworn, declares the Lord. So who is the angel of the Lord? The Lord. Jesus. Because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son, indeed I will greatly bless you, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heavens and as the sand which is on the seashore. In your seed all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Now, we'll talk about this. One of the things, when we get towards the end of September, we have the Jewish holidays. And I want to do one of these classes. I want to do a little, and it'll have to be a summary, because to do three feasts in one class would be a lot. But you have the Feast of Trumpets, you have the Day of Atonement, and you have the Feast of Tabernacles. Well, the Feast of Trumpets, one of the things that the Jewish rabbis say happened, that this actually, the event that we're talking about here, which was, they call it the Akedah, or the binding of Isaac. And that's what this is talking about here. And we should have mentioned that. And so what did he say to Abraham? You have not withheld your son from me. And one time I was asked to preach on the day of Feast of Trumpets at a church where a lot of Jewish believers went to in Long Island. And I really had to think, okay, now, why did God ask Abraham to sacrifice his son? And then, was that right of God? Of course we know it's right, because we believe God is a right God. But why was it right? And here's what I came to. Because he was only asking Abraham to do what he was willing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. So just as Abraham did not withhold his son, God did not withhold his son from us. So, and a lot of people struggle with that scripture there, and the binding of Isaac, and why would God? If you read it out of context, well, boy, this is a vicious God, and a lot of people say that about the Old Testament. Oh, this vicious God of the Old Testament. No, he wasn't asking Abraham to do anything he wasn't willing to do himself. The difference is he actually did it, right? He only asked Abraham to do it. He didn't make Abraham do it. So, anyway, so we see that the land was given to Abraham. And then let's just real quickly, we'll wrap it up by looking at how it's passed on to Isaac and then Jacob. And then we won't get to it, we won't read it all, but Genesis 49 is actually passed on to the sons. So let's turn to Genesis 26. Verses 2. The Lord appeared to him, being Isaac, and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land which I tell you." Actually, I'm sorry. There's Isaac here, but I think he's talking to Abraham here. "Sojourn in the land I will be with you and bless you. For to you and your descendants I will give all the land, and I will establish the oath which I swore to your father Abraham." I'm wrong. He's talking to Isaac. "I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and will give your descendants all the lands, and by your descendants all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Because Abraham obeyed me and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." So there's probably one thing to point out here, a little aside. There's more to what we know about this. There's more scripture than what we know about.
Yeah.
Because what did he have? He had
Laws.
his commandments, his statutes, and his laws. So now the Jewish people would say, well, he had the Mosaic covenant before it was given, which I don't believe that. But there's some sense that God gave some writings, some I wouldn't say writing, but some passed on information and to Abraham that we don't really know. We just know that they're his commandments and statutes and laws. Anyway, so. You have a question?
Well, even Jesus gave information to Adam and Eve in the garden.
Mhm.
It was never written down.
Yeah.
So he had also covenants and
Mm-hmm.
things, same thing.
All right, so now it's going to go to Isaac and his descendants, okay? Not who? Ishmael, right? And who says it goes to Ishmael? The Arabs, okay. So let's move on to chapter 28. Verse 13. "And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. The land in which you lie I will give to you and to your descendants. Your descendants will also be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in your descendants shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you to you." So now who did it go to? Abraham, then Isaac, then Jacob. And that's what I don't understand about the Muslims. Is okay, you think it went to Ishmael, but if you keep reading a little bit further, you see that it didn't go to one of Ishmael's sons. It went to Jacob. So again, I don't know how they do that, but it would seem to me that, okay, even if you think it went to Ishmael, well, okay, God kind of corrects you a little bit. Now, that'll tell you that there's errors in our Bible and things like that is what they'll tell you. But anyway, so really, the foundation, the Abrahamic covenant, and here we really see the different aspects of it, and we'll see those expanded. He's going to give them a land. He's going to give them a seed, right? And it's through that seed that there will be blessing. The whole world will be